Caledonian Elixir. Welcome to the Caledonian Elixir. This is a podcast that takes a tragic deep dive into the darkest recesses of the human condition. I'm your host Vincent, and today on the Elixir I'm going to explore the saga of the Aryan race, the mythological Indo-Europeans shrouded in legend and drawing from evidence found in the ancient Vedas and Avesta to present-day genetic markers. Together we shall unravel the mythical history of the Aryan people. It is hard to find an adult whom hasn't heard of the word Aryan. It is a controversial word, shrouded in myth, laden with connotations of white supremacy or even the Third Reich, and I'm sure this episode will invoke thoughts of swastikas and jackbooted psychopaths. However, the saga of the Aryans is a historical epic about the ancient Indo-Europeans who called themselves Aryans, the noble ones, a lost civilization forced to migrate southwards of their home due to the changing climatic conditions into present-day Europe, Iran and India. According to passages found in Vedic and Avestic scripture, the Aryan civilization dates back many thousands of years, before Rome, before Babylon, even before ancient Sumeria. Their home was called Airyana Vaeja and was located in a region which was incrementally destroyed by invasion of snow and ice, forcing the Aryans from their northern home, Airyana Vaeja. But what is Vedic and Avestic literature? Because I think it's important to describe that so you've got an understanding of its relevance here. The Vedas are a large corpus of religious texts originating in ancient India. Now, these texts were composed in Sanskrit, and Sanskrit is incidentally a form of Indo-European language comprising the important ancient texts of the Rig Veda and the Bhagavad Gita. It has been part of the Indian psyche for thousands of years that an Indo-European people settled on the Ganges in northern India. And according to this Aryan invasion myth, an invading group of Indo-Europeans called Aryans subjugated the native Indian population. This theory is supported by passages in the Rig Veda. Through fear of you, the dark peoples fled, relinquishing their possessions without battle. The Rig Veda. The above quote is from a passage that narrates a conflict between a people called the Aryans and a group called the Dasas. Now I want to add that the Vedic age in India began around 3,500 years ago, so it is in every sense an ancient myth. The Avesta is the religious text of Zoroastrianism. It is a different ancient religion with teachings similarly dating back around 3,500 years. They're located in the world known today as Iran. The ancient Iranians practiced Zoroastrianism, a religion founded by their revered prophet Zarathustra, who, observing his culture forgetting their traditions, revived it through his new spiritual practice, Zoroastrianism. So why is this relevant? Well, the Zoroastrian Avesta is similar to the Bible in that it is an ancient text containing passages about peoples and locations, and one people it describes as the Aryans, and one location it describes as Airyana Vaeja. Indeed, it is why Iran is called Iran. Phonetically it is pronounced Aryan, as the ancient Iranians believed they were the descendants of the Aryans. The historical name of Persia was ascribed by the Greeks and not the actual historical Iranians. But what will be seen as important to the origin of the Aryans is the Avesta that describes the northern homeland of the Aryans is the land called Airyana Vaeja, now being a land of winter and ice. Ahura Mazda created the first best region, Airyana Vaeja. Then the destroyer in opposition to it created the death-dealing serpent of winter, the Avesta Venedad. The elites of the Third Reich believed the origins of Germanic Europeans belonged to an ancient Indo-European race, and that the evidence to verify those beliefs can be found in the ruins, physiology and the myths of the Far East, and these myths are the Vedas and the Avesta. But what of the origin of the Aryans? The idea of an ancient civilization located near the Arctic circumpolar belt at a time when its climate was friendlier and more familiar to human habitation is also suggested in myths of the Iranian, Indian, Russian and even Scandinavian cultures. The Zoroastrian Avesta describes Airyana Vaeja, the home of the Aryans, existing in a location that was once hospitable, having 7 months of summer and 5 months of winter. 10 months of winter are there, 2 months of summer, 7 months of sun are there, and 5 of darkness, the Venedad Avesta. So, is there a region that has over half a year of sunlight, as is described in the Avesta? Well, the answer is yes. Between the North Pole and the Arctic Circle, the sun is above the horizon for at least 7 months, and as far as the first part of the sentence, 10 months of winter are there. It is known that the period of winter in the Arctic lasts between 9 and 10 months. Now, the Indian Rig Veda too describes a land where the sun is represented as having 7 rays, meaning 7 months, and is possible only in the Arctic region. Now, this is very insightful description for an ancient people in Iran and India who were located below the equator and had never travelled to the Arctic belt. So how could they have known the conditions there? Well, the authors of the Vedas may not have known. They may not have witnessed this phenomena, but they knew these facts by tradition because their ancestors experienced these events for themselves. In another part of the Venedad Avesta, the king of Airyana Vaeja, a man named Yima, is warned by God that a fatal winter shall come to their home and it will destroy everything. In order to protect against this coming calamity, Yima, the king, is told to make an enclosure and remove seeds, animals, plants for preservation. Now, we are also told in the Venedad that the moon and stars rose but once a year in this location, and again this only happens in the Arctic circumpolar belt region. But this story to me is also a reminder of the Noah's Ark story, but instead of a biblical deluge of water and rain, the Avesta deluge is of snow and ice. The sun was invisible, darkness hung its dark hood over the entire world. Snow was falling incessantly. Whipped by the ice-cold howling gale, the beautiful home of the Aryans, Airyana Vaeja, was turned into an Iceland. Poris homi have wala. Now, I bet many of you who are listening are saying to yourselves, the Arctic and its circumpolar belt is a frozen wasteland. There's no way a Bronze Age civilization could have existed there. I mean, after all, not long ago we came out of an ice age that saw Northern Europe and America under a sheet of ice. But what is less well known is that the ice age was marked by glacial and interglacial periods. And the conditions during the interglacial periods would have been warmer. So as a fact that for a period of even thousands of years there was a milder climate within the Arctic region during the last ice age. There is an example of a migration that resulted in adaptation to a new environment in the ice age. Over 15,000 years ago, our ancestors hunted, consumed woolly mammoths, a species of elephant. Fossils in northern Europe have shown this. Now, if you look at where elephant species exist, it is close to the equator, where conditions are warm, hence why elephants are scattered throughout Africa and Southeast Asia. So why would elephants, thousands of years ago, during the last ice age, migrate to northern Europe if the climatic conditions were freezing? It makes no sense. They would die. Unless at one point the conditions were warmer in northern Europe, more hospitable to elephant species than as the climate transitioned from the interglacial warmer period into the glacial period. The mammoth gradually adapted, evolving over the centuries with a thick coat of wool to keep warm. Genes are like the story, and DNA is the language the story is written in. Sam Klein. If an ancient Aryan people did migrate from their homes in northern Europe, near the Arctic belt, and establishing their culture wherever they settled, then surely there would be biological evidence to show that they once existed. Well, there is. As I said, the nations that have a mythos of an ancient civilization existing near the Arctic are the Scandinavians, Russians, Iranians, and the Indians. Now, the Scandinavian, Greeks, and Russians call this land in the north Hyperborea. The Indians and Iranians call this land Airyana Vaeja. However, it is the same place. And these nations share not just a similar mythology, but they all share the same blood haplogroup. Now, to make a long story short, a blood haplogroup is a pattern of DNA that tends to occur within individuals and nations. And what is really interesting, adding support to the Aryan saga, is that these nations, Scandinavia, Russia, India and Iran, all share a dominant R1A blood haplogroup. Therefore, the peoples living there have a similar ethnic origin, and if you know your geography, Scandinavia and Russia are located near the Arctic circumpolar belt. Therefore, we have not only cross-cultural evidence found in religion or myth, but also DNA evidence that these territories at one point were occupied by the same ethnic group. But there's more. In the Vedas and Avesta, it is mentioned that the calendar of Airyana Vaeja was broken into two seasons, one of day summer and another of darkness winter. And it is the same in the ancient Scandinavian and Norse calendar. One season is broken into light summer and the other darkness. In other words, the calendar there too is broken into two seasons. Everything we admire on earth today, our science, art, technology and invention, is the creative genius of a few people, perhaps one, the Aryans, and on them depends the existence of our culture. Adolf Hitler. The elites of the Third Reich were obsessed with the Aryan myth. They dispatched archaeological expeditions across the world looking for evidence of the Aryan Indo-Europeans that they believed established a superior culture across the world. One location scoured by the Reich is in the Himalaya in northern India. You see, the Nazi academics researched the aforementioned Vedas that contains passages locating the home of the Aryans between the Himalaya and the Vindhya mountains, the land of Avarta, translated from Sanskrit as the abode of the Aryans, the land the Aryans settled after the Great Migration. In this land can also be found the esoteric symbol called the swastika. It is a symbol that appears all over temples in Tibet and India, and under the banner of this symbol, the Third Reich subjugated, sterilised, destroyed nations, leaving tens of millions dead, embarking on a psychopathic mission to conquer what they believed were the inferior peoples of the planet. Now, the swastika is now synonymous with Nazism. It is taboo to use it, and in some parts of the world a crime. That same discord results when we seriously research or speak of the Aryan saga. And look, I'm not rewriting the past here or pushing a racial theory. The tragedy of the Second World War, which both haunts civilization and serves as an impetus to prevent a future catastrophe, should not also assault the truth. This world we exist is part of, well, it's a strange reality, and our ancestors inhabited the same strange reality, and scenes of their lives flash by us like glimpses of an exotic parallel world, and it doesn't do them or us a justice to forget or conceal that world. We are a species with amnesia. We have forgotten so much about ourselves and what the process of history and archaeology should be is an act of remembering. Well, I hope you liked and enjoyed and learned something. If you did, subscribe, and if you didn't, tune in to the next episode, because maybe you'll enjoy that. Until then, vaya con Dios.